Divorce. You know, it's a word that carries a ton of weight, and it's a reality for millions of people. But what if we could look at it a little differently? What if, instead of just being an ending, it could be a healthy transition? In this explainer, we're going to break down the research on how to get through this incredibly tough process. Okay, let's get right into it.
So, first up, a number from our source material at Oklahoma State University that might really surprise you. Almost half of all first marriages in the US end in divorce. That is a huge number. And it means that understanding this whole process is more important than ever, not just for the couple, but for their kids, their friends, their whole world.
And that leads us to the big question, right? Can a divorce actually be good? Now, that term might sound a little weird, but it's not about being happy that a marriage is over. It's about handling the transition in a way that actually protects your well-being. So, what do we even mean by a good divorce? Well, here's the definition we're going to use. It's a process where the main goal is to come out the other side with at least the same level of emotional well-being that you had before it all started. It's all about minimizing the damage and building a stable future. To get there, the research lays out a 5-step path. We're going to walk through each one: the decision, the announcement, dismantling the family, creating something called a bi-nuclear family, and then finally, the aftermath. Think of this as our roadmap for the next few minutes. All right, let's start at the very beginning with the first 2 steps. This is that really intense, personal, internal phase where the idea of divorce first starts to form and then eventually gets said out loud. Step 1 is the decision. And here's the thing that's so important to understand. It is almost never a mutual decision. It usually starts with just one person feeling unhappy, feeling dissatisfied, and this can go on for months, sometimes even years, long before their partner has a clue anything is wrong. So this creates 2 completely different experiences, 2 different emotional timelines. On one side, you have the initiator. They've been thinking about this, maybe for a long time. They've already started to grieve the marriage and pull away emotionally. But for the opposer, the person being left, the news can feel like a lightning bolt out of nowhere. It's pure shock, disbelief, crisis mode. Emotionally, they are on 2 totally different planets. And this brings up a really interesting statistic. Who is it that's usually the initiator? Well, the research shows that women actually initiate about 3/4 of all divorces. Now, the reasons for this are super complex, but some studies suggest women often report lower levels of happiness in the relationship and might have stronger support networks to lean on during a big life change like this. Okay, that leads us right into the second step, the announcement. This is that huge pivotal moment where the private thought becomes a shared reality. And it's a real fork in the road. For some couples, it's a massive wake-up call that leads to counseling, maybe even reconciliation. For others, it's the official starting gun for separation.
All right, so once the decision is out there and separation seems to be the way forward, we move into step 3, dismantling the family. This is where the emotional side of things starts to get very, very real and logistical.
And the separation itself can go in 2 wildly different directions. There's what's called an orderly separation, where the couple actually plans it together. They tell the kids in a unified, clear way. This keeps conflict low and is just vastly better for everyone's mental health. And then there's a disorderly separation, like one person just abruptly leaving. That creates a massive crisis. It leaves everyone feeling abandoned and helpless. The choice between these 2 paths makes a huge difference. You know, if there's one single thing to take away from all this, especially when kids are involved, it is this right here. The lower the conflict between adults, the better kids usually do. That is it. That is the single most important factor for how well kids are going to adjust. It really is all about managing that conflict. So, we've talked about the process of ending one family structure. Now let's shift gears and talk about the process of creating a new one. This brings us to step 4, the bi-nuclear family. So, what on earth is a bi-nuclear family? It sounds complicated, but it's really not. It just means that you're one family, but you now exist across 2 separate homes. You are still a family, the structure has just changed. The real challenge is figuring out how to reorganize your lives in this new setup. And how you manage that new setup really depends on the kind of co-parenting relationship you have. The research actually breaks it down into 5 types. At the very best, you have perfect pals who stay close friends. Then you have cooperative colleagues. They're friendly, businesslike, and focused on the kids. After that, it gets tough. You've got angry associates and fiery foes where there's a lot of conflict and kids get stuck in the middle. And at the far end,
dissolved duos, where one parent just vanishes. And those relationships lead to two main ways of operating. The high-functioning types, the perfect pals and cooperative colleagues, they can do cooperative parenting. They talk openly, they share holidays, it works. But for those high-conflict styles, the best you can often aim for is parallel parenting. Think of it like two trains on separate parallel tracks. The parents operate completely independently. They don't interact, they don't share information, and that actually helps minimize the conflict for the kids. All right, we've made it to the final stage. What happens after the divorce is legally settled? Let's look at the long-term picture and pull together the main takeaways from this whole process.
So step 5, the aftermath, is basically a reminder that the family story doesn't just stop. It keeps evolving. For example, if someone remarries, that introduces a whole new world of step-parents, step-siblings, new roles, new rules. It requires everyone to adapt all over again, sometimes years after the initial split. It's a constant process. And one last incredibly important reminder about the timing of all this. The research is crystal clear. Those first 2 years right after the separation are a huge adjustment period for kids. And during that window, cooperation between parents isn't just a nice idea, it is absolutely critical for their long-term well-being. So why does any of this matter? What's the point of all this hard work? Well, the benefits are huge. You get to maintain important family relationships. You protect your kids from the worst of the fallout, and you find a way to integrate this massive life event into your story in a healthy way. It's really about being able to make the best possible decisions for everyone involved, yourself, your ex, and your children.
Which really just leaves us with a final question to think about. When you consider all these steps and your own unique situation, what would a good divorce actually look like for you? The answer is going to be different for everybody, but this framework at least gives us a way to think about it constructively. And there you have it, a look at the research behind a good divorce, all based on the work from Oklahoma State University. It's a really challenging path, for sure, but it is one that can be navigated with a lot of care and intention. Thanks for joining us for this explainer.